The Spire of Dawn was a monument to hubris, hanging from orbit by a thread of impossible physics. It punctured the upper atmosphere of Eretus, a gleaming needle of neo-obsidian alloy and sentient crystal, holding the fragile concordance of harmony within its gravity-defying halls. Below, the planet's surface was a swirl of turquoise and rust, a beautiful, distant floor. Inside, it was a matrix of suffocating protocol and ironclad security. Delegations from 36 worlds moved through the grand atrium, a cavern of light and polished stone. Their forms were a spectrum of biology, chitinous, gaseous, silicon, and simple, vulnerable flesh. Each footfall, each whispered negotiation, was part of a ceremony generations in the making, designed to bind the Neo-Obsidian Empire in an age of peace. And every ceremony, Aiden Hale knew, was a loaded weapon. To the casual observer, he was just another human specialist, attached to the Terran delegation, Aiden Hale, Inter-System Semiotician. His official docket listed his purpose as advising the human envoy on Aurelian ritual syntax and honorifics. He was tall for a baseline human, with a cheap suit that looked expensive until you got close, and a disarming, tired smile he used as a shield. He looked, quite deliberately, like a mid-level academic who was perpetually jet-lagged. In reality, Aiden Hale was a lexomancer. He was a cognitive soldier for the Glass Choir, a shadow cell that treated language not as a tool for communication, but as a system to be hacked. He weaponized metaphors. He built mimetic kill vehicles. His job was to see the patterns in the prayers, the threats hidden in the hymns. And for the past 6 months, his entire job had been to watch Empress Sci-Fi Nix. He was watching her now. She was at the center of the atrium, a column of calm in the swirling chaos of alien diplomacy. The Aurelians were tall, liquid grace humanoids with skin like polished alabaster and eyes the color of a gas flame. Sci-Fi was all that, amplified. She wore the circlet of provenance, but even without the crown, she commanded the space. Her voice, as she greeted the Centauri matriarch, was a low, resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate the very air. Aiden felt the familiar pull, the professional admiration layered over a baseline human awe, and beneath both, the cold, hard fear. He had analyzed 10,000 hours of her public addresses, her private edicts, her childhood linguistic lessons. He knew her cadence, her preferred rhetorical devices, her almost imperceptible tells. He probably knew her better than her regent, which was precisely why he had been avoiding her like a plague. He shifted his weight, trying to fade back into the shadow of a basalt column. Too late. Her gaze, blue and piercing, cut through the crowd and locked directly onto him. It lasted only a second. Not an imperial summons. Just an acknowledgement. A question. His stomach tightened. The Glass Choir's directive had been simple. Observe. Do not engage. You are the lure. Now. The lure was feeling conspicuously hooked. He spent the next 3 hours in linguistic hell, translating procedural greetings between his boss, Special Envoy Thomas Jang, and a delegation of Vitosh, whose language was 90% polite, inhaled whistles. When he was released, his throat was raw and his patience was vapor. He made for the nearest refreshment alcove, dreaming of coffee real, bitter, Terran coffee, not the scented steam broth the Aurelians favored. He rounded the corner, into the garden of bioluminescent shards. It was one of the Spire's wonders, a zero-gravity conservatory, where crystalline flora grew in mesmerizing, slow-motion spirals, pulsing with soft light. It was also, by now, empty. Almost. Empress Sci-Fi Nix stood before a constellation of glowing quartz lilies, her back to him. Her formal robes were a cascade of white and obsidian, stark against the garden's gentle neon. Aiden froze. He had 2 options. He could retreat, silently, and pray she had not noticed him. Or he could walk into the trap. His training screamed for the former. His instincts, those stupid, self-sabotaging human instincts, pushed him forward. He had avoided this for months. The strain was becoming untenable. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice flat. He gave the precise, shallow bow required of a human adjunct. She turned, up close. Her features were so perfectly symmetrical, they bordered on unsettling. Her blue eyes were not just blue, but a complex, shifting pattern, like nebulae. She studied him, not as an empress studies a servant, but as a scientist studies an anomaly. "Mr. Hale," she said. Her voice was smoother than the polished crystal around them. "The semiotician from Earth. You have been attached to my court, in an advisory capacity, for 184 days. 185, Your Majesty," Aiden corrected, before he could stop himself. "The transit day from the Veritas orbital station counts. According to protocol 6-4 Alpha." A flicker of something not amusement, but interest crossed her face. "Indeed. Then for 185 days, you have meticulously avoided any and all functions where I am personally present. You have filed 4 separate schedule conflict reports, 2 of which I know to be fabrications. You have taken alternate transport tubes and, on at least one occasion, feigned a sudden gastrointestinal ailment to exit a room I was about to enter." Aiden felt a cold sweat prickle his neck. "Your Majesty, I assure you, my dedication to the human delegation's needs is—" "You are avoiding me, Mr. Hale," she stated. It was not an accusation. It was a fact laid bare. "I am not offended. I am, however, curious. Why have you kept your distance?" This was it. The moment the choir had warned him against, the interaction he was supposed to prevent at all costs. His mind raced, cycling through deflection protocols. He opted for the one that suited his cover: mild, academic disrespect. He sighed, a put-upon sound. "To be perfectly honest, Your Majesty, it's the chandeliers. I have a crippling allergy to royal chandeliers. The ostentation gives me hives." He was rewarded with absolute, profound silence. Serapha's expression did not change, but the light from the crystals around them seemed to dim, the colors shifting from warm pinks to cold, hard blues. "I see," she said softly. Aiden winced internally. Maybe he had pushed it too far. "That was," he backpedaled, "a poorly conceived attempt at humor. My apologies." "It was," she agreed, "but it was also a lie." She raised her left hand. The rings she wore were not jewelry, but control interfaces. With a simple, elegant gesture, she touched the air. Aiden felt it instantly. The ambient sound of the spire, the distant hum of engines, the whisper of ventilation vanished. The air pressure shifted, becoming dense and still. A faint, shimmering barrier, barely visible, now enclosed the garden, an acoustic seal. "Let us try again, Mr. Hale," Serapha said, her voice now the only sound in the universe. "This chamber is now secure. No signal enters, no signal leaves. Your delegation cannot reach you. My guards cannot hear me. There is only you, me, and the truth. Why have you kept your distance?" The time for jokes was over. Protocol time was a distant memory. This was a new space, one she had created just for them. Aiden looked into those terrifying, intelligent eyes, and his entire cover identity crumbled to dust. The Lexomancer took over. "I have been avoiding you, Your Majesty," Aiden said, his voice now devoid of its false, bumbling warmth. "Because my job is to protect you, and the only way to do that was to stay as far away from you as possible." Her perfect brow furrowed. "Protect me from what? Your awkward humor?" From them, Aiden said. He dropped the syllables in silence. From the pale crown. The name hit her. He saw it. A microscopic flinch, a fractional drop in her skin's luminescence. The pale crown was a myth, a boogeyman. They were the extremist fringe, the Aurelian purists who believed the empire had been tainted by alien contact. They were whispered, but never acknowledged. The Pale Crown is a disorganized cult of malcontents, she said, her voice tight with programmed dismissal. They are disorganized on purpose, Your Majesty, Aiden countered, stepping closer. He was breaking every rule of the choir, but the game was already forfeit. They operate like a distributed virus, and for the last 8 months, I have been intercepting their communications, not their overt signals, but their dark stream, the messages hidden in the subharmonics of your own ritual protocols. He had her full, undivided attention. You intercepted ritual syntax. I am a semiotician, Your Majesty. I do not just read language. I read the shape of it, and there is a new shape in your empire's most sacred texts. A stain. Someone has been embedding command line triggers inside your holiest benedictions. Tiny, mimetic payloads. Payloads for what? She whispered. Aiden took a deep breath. To frame humanity. The Pale Crown is planning an assassination. A purist assassination, they are calling it. They intend to kill a high-value target during the concordance and leave a trail of linguistic evidence. Terran-coded syntax that points directly at my delegation. A casus belli. An excuse to shatter the treaty, expel the human parasites, and purify the empire. Serapha's composure was flawless, but Aiden saw the fury building behind her eyes. Who is the target? Aiden met her gaze. He did not need to say the name. She knew. You, he said simply. They are going to kill you, Your Majesty, and they are going to use humanity as the scapegoat. She absorbed this. Her mind was clearly working at a speed that Aiden found both terrifying and admirable. She processed the threat, categorized it, and moved to the logical counterpoint. You speak of intercepts and linguistic stains, she said, her voice like ice. You are a human academic. How could you possibly have access to this information? How could you break our ritual encryption? Because I am not just an academic, Aiden said. He was all in now. And I am not here as an advisor. I am an operative for a Terran intelligence cell called the Glass Choir. We believe a war is won not with ships or bombs, but with ideas. And we hunt the people who weaponize them. A lexomancer, Serapha breathed. The word was ancient Aurelian, a dead word. It meant word wizard, or speaker of truth. It was a term for a heretic. A cognitive operative, Aiden corrected weakly. The term is a bit archaic. And the Glass Choir sent you, she mused, to stop this, alone. No, Aiden said. They sent me to be the bait. Revelation hung in the air, heavier than the silence. Explain, she commanded. The Pale Crown needed a patsy, Aiden said, his voice low and rapid. They needed a human close enough to the concordance to be plausible, but insignificant enough to be disposable. A specialist, a linguist, someone who, when the evidence was found, would be the perfect, believable terrorist. They have been watching me for months, Your Majesty, shadowing my communications, tracking my movements, just waiting for me to get close to you. So your avoidance was tactical, Aiden finished. I knew they were watching. I knew their entire plan hinged on my proximity to you. If I got close, if I had this conversation a month ago, their surveillance net would have flagged it. The plan would have changed. They would have moved their assets. By keeping my distance, by playing the part of the bumbling, intimidated academic, I kept their plan stable. I kept them predictable. I let them think their snare was working. He ran a hand through his hair, the mask of the operative falling away, revealing the exhausted man beneath. I have been a willing lure, Your Majesty, and I have been terrified every day that I was wrong, that I would miscalculate, and you would die, and it would be my fault. Sci-Fi, Empress of 1,000 suns, leader of the most advanced species in the sector, was speechless. She stared at him, her expression a battleground of conflicting emotions. Aiden could see the logical flow, fury at his deception, violation at his infiltration, cold calculation as she analyzed the threat and, beneath it all, a sliver of something he could only identify as grudging respect. Who, she finally asked, who in my court is powerful enough to orchestrate this, to sanction the murder of an empress and use a forbidden cult as their instrument? Aiden's heart hammered. This was the final seal. Once this was spoken, there was no going back. You already know, he said gently. Who stands to gain the most? Who controls the military? Who controls interpretation of sacred texts? Who, in your absence, would inherit an empire already purified of its human problem? Sci-Fi closed her eyes. It was a gesture of profound pain. Regent Arcturus Vale, she said, the name a betrayal on her lips. And High Marshal Kaldor Wren. Vale handles the syntax. Wren handles the steel, Aiden confirmed. They are coordinating what they call a linguistic sacrifice. They are not just planning to kill you. They are planning to unwrite you, to use the most sacred rites of the concordance to not only murder you, but to retroactively invalidate your reign, making their coup a holy necessity. Sci-Fi turned away from him, her shoulders rigid. The light from the crystals cast sharp, unfeeling shadows across her face. You come to me with an impossible story. You claim to be a spy. You accuse the two most powerful men in my empire of high treason and deicide. You have offered me nothing, not a single piece of hard data, only words. Words are my data, Your Majesty, Aiden shot back, and they are the only weapons that matter in this. Then prove it, she snapped, whirling to face him. Her imperial fury was a tangible thing now, a force that pressed against him. You have made these accusations. You have torn down the veil. You have placed me, and your entire species, in an impossible position. If you are right, you have altered the course of history. If you are wrong, if this is a human ploy, a glass choir fabrication to gain leverage, I will personally see to it that Earth becomes a myth. Aiden did not flinch. I am right, and I can prove it. How? By letting them spring the trap, Aiden said. Vale and Wren are not fools. They know you are brilliant. They know you are careful. They think they are smarter, because they are using a weapon, a linguistic plague that they believe only they understand. They do not believe a human, a species they see as primitive, emotional, and syntactically clumsy, could ever even perceive it, let alone fight it. He stepped toward her, closing the final gap between them. They are wrong. You and I are going to set our own trap, a reflective ritual. We will use the concordance, their chosen stage, to expose them. We will turn their own weapon, their own language, back against them. Sci-Fi searched his face, looking for the lie, the weakness, the flaw in his human logic. You would risk everything on that, on a turn of phrase. They are staking their empire on it, Aiden countered. The only difference is, they are using a tool they stole. I am using a tool I was born with. The one thing they have not factored into their equations. The one weapon the Pale Crown cannot imagine an Earthborn human possessing. And that is, Aiden Hale smiled, and for the first time, it was not tired, and it was not a shield. It was sharp. Disciplined imagination, Your Majesty. Sci-Fi held his gaze for a long, silent moment. The fate of empires hung in the balance, in a sealed, soundproof garden. "Very well, Lexomancer," she said, the ancient, heretical word now sounding like a title. "You have your alliance. Show me how to build your mirror." The acoustic seal dissolved, and the ambient hum of the Spire of Dawn rushed back into the bioluminescent garden. It felt like a violation, the return of the real world. Serapha Nyx did not wait. "Come," she commanded, already moving, her white and obsidian robes flowing behind her. Aiden Hale followed, his mind still reeling. The alliance was made. The abyss was crossed. Now comes the impossible part, the work. She led him, not to the command deck, nor to her private chambers, but deep into the spire, down gravity lifts that hummed with ancient, quiet power, to a sector marked only by a subtle, archaic Aurelian glyph. The door was a seamless wall of obsidian that irised open at her presence, revealing a cavernous, circular room. This was the Oriellum, the Royal Archive. It was not a place of books or data slates. The walls themselves were the archive, lined with billions of glowing, thread-like filaments of light, each a strand of living memory, history, and law. At the center of the room stood not a computer, but a figure, indistinct and shifting, as if composed of captured starlight and condensed fog. This was Auriel, the archivist, a being that had transcended the line between organic life and pure information millennia ago. A third figure was already present, standing stiffly at attention, her armor a dull, functional gray against the archive's glow. She was an Aurelian, but where Serapha was grace and light, this woman was iron and shadow. Her blue flame eyes were cold, her features sharp, her entire being coiled with a pragmatic lethargy. "Captain Rhea's son," Serapha said, her voice echoing in the vast space. "Head of my personal security, the only member of my staff who has not, in the last year, attended a ritual led by an oath priest." Rhea's eyes snapped to Aiden, and her skepticism was a physical force. "Your Majesty, you are in a secure room with an unvetted alien, a human." "This is Mr. Hale," Serapha said, her tone barring any argument. "He is a Lexomancer, and he has just informed me that Regent Vale and Marshal Wren are planning to assassinate me during the concordance." Rhea's hand instinctively went to the sidearm holstered on her thigh. Her eyes never left Aiden. "That is high treason, and a fantastical accusation." "Is it?" Aiden asked, his voice deliberately mild. "Or is it just the first thing that has made sense in a long time?" "Auriel," Serapha commanded, ignoring the tension. "I need the ritual scroll for the concordance's opening benediction. All layers." The light form in the center of the room pulsed. "Majesty," a voice whispered, seeming to come from the walls themselves. It was 1,000 voices at once, old and young, male and female. "The scroll is restricted. Edict of the Regent's office." "An edict I now override," Serapha said, her voice ringing with imperial power. The air in the room shimmered. A vast, floating scroll of holographic text appeared, symbols and glyphs glowing in ethereal gold. It was beautiful, and to Aiden, it was horrifying. "It is clean," Rhea said, scanning the text. "Standard benediction. I have seen it a dozen times." "You are looking at the surface," Aiden said. He stepped forward, his eyes tracing the patterns. "You are reading the words. You are not reading the silence between them." He pointed to a section. "Auriel, isolate this stanza. Subharmonic analysis. Look for a fractal linguistic carrier wave." "That is an obscure protocol. Lexomancer," Auriel whispered. The archive hummed. The text shifted. And then, like a drop of ink in water, a stain appeared, a dark, jagged line of code, nested inside the golden glyphs. Rhea's son swore, a short, guttural Aurelian curse. "It's a trigger," Aiden said, his voice low. "Not a bomb, not a poison. It's a key for a very specific lock." "The Aurelian high brain," Oriel's voice whispered, a note of synthetic horror entering their tone. "The ritual center. This frequency. This specific syllabic combination it would not kill. It would seize." "A targeted neurological event," Aiden confirmed, his stomach tight. "During the peak of the ceremony, in front of 36 delegations, the Empress collapses. Chaos. By the time the royal physicians who are, I guarantee, loyal to Vale pronounce her dead, the evidence has been planted." The Terran-coded syntax. Serapha finished for him, her face a mask of cold fury. "Exactly," Aiden said. "A perfect, purest assassination. No blood, no messy explosions. Just ritual failure. Caused, of course, by the polluting influence of the human delegation." "Vale," Rhea spat, her voice thick with hatred. "He would use our most sacred rites as a blade." "It's worse than that, Captain," Aiden said. "This is just the ignition. The real weapon is not in this scroll." Before he could continue, his wrist comm, a simple, low-tech Terran device, vibrated with a Priority 1 summons. He glanced at the ID, Thomas Zhang. He looked at Serapha, who nodded once. He found the special envoy in their delegation's quarters, pacing a trench in the expensive Aurelian carpet. Thomas was a good man, a career diplomat who believed in forms, in channels, in the slow, grinding work of bureaucracy. He was a man completely unequipped for this. "Aiden, thank God," Thomas said, not even trying to hide the panic in his voice. "We have a problem, a major problem. The Vitosh are claiming we filed the wrong trade exemptions. The Synthari are offended by our seating arrangement, and I just got a message from Regent Vale's office. He is concerned about our delegation's unfamiliarity with Aurelian customs." It felt like a threat. "Aiden." Aiden closed the door, leaning against it. "It was Thomas. What are we going to do? We are guests here. This is not our fight. We are walking on eggshells." "And where have you been? You have been off network for 3 hours." "I was," Aiden said, searching for the words, "in a meeting." "A meeting with who, the Empress?" Thomas laughed. A short, sharp, terrified sound. Aiden just looked at him. The laugh died in Thomas's throat. "Aiden, what did you do?" "I am cultivating a new diplomatic relationship," Aiden said, attempting a smile that did not quite land. "This is not a joke," Thomas snapped. "We are here to build bridges, not to get involved in their lunatic fringe domestic politics. Whatever you think you are doing, you are not authorized. You are a semiotician." "Thomas," Aiden said, his voice gentle but firm. "It is a bit late. We did not get involved in their politics. Their politics got involved with us. They are planning to use us as the scapegoat for a coup. I am trying to stop that." "By yourself, by talking to the Empress. That is interference. That is a diplomatic catastrophe." "Adding interference to the list of charges does not seem much worse than deicide, which is what we are currently scheduled for," Aiden said, his dry wit a thin veneer over his own exhaustion. "Officially, I am still just allergic to the decor. I am handling this. Go to your meetings. File your forms. Be the perfect diplomat. But stay away from Regent Vale." Thomas just stared at him, his face pale. "God help us. God help all of us." Aiden's smile faded. He was right, he thought, as he walked back to the Oriellum. "If I fail, I have not just condemned Serapha. I have doomed Earth." The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders, heavier than any armor. When he returned, Oriel had projected a new image. It was a vast, complex web, a network of names, financial lines, and coded affiliations. You were correct. Lexomancer, Oriel's voice hummed. The Pale Crown is not a cult. It is a system, a shadow state. The web was horrifyingly clear. At the top, 2 nodes. Regent Arcturus Vale, controlling the state and the Oath Priests. High Marshal Kaldor Ren, controlling the military and the fanatics. Their doctrine, Oriel explained, was purification through subtraction. They did not just hate aliens. They hated any part of Aurelian culture that had been influenced by aliens. They saw the concordance not as a triumph, but as the ultimate pollution. They are using ritual to legalize their violence, Sarafa said, her voice hollow. And they have been for decades, Aiden said, his mind racing. But the scroll is just the trigger. Where is the gun? What is the real weapon? He spent the next 12 hours in the Oriellum, sleepless, fueled by bad Terran coffee from his private stash and a growing sense of dread. He and Oriel sifted through millennia of data. He scanned architectural plans, financial records, and cross-referenced star charts with holy texts. Rhea brought him food he did not taste. Sarafa sat with him, watching, learning, her imperial mind absorbing his methods like a sponge. And then he found it. It was not in a military file. It was in the architectural plans for the grand atrium itself. In the vast dome, high above the assembly, was a dedication, a series of glyphs, inlaid with lapis lazuli. "It's a eulogy," Aiden murmured, rubbing his eyes. "A eulogy for the spire's completion, but it's addressed to Sarafa." "Regent Vale commissioned it," Sarafa offered, coming to stand beside him. "A gift to celebrate my ascension." "A gift," Aiden repeated. His blood ran cold. "Oriel, project the text of the Lapis Codec, now." Glowing blue glyphs appeared in the air. "Now," Aiden said, his voice trembling with a terrible discovery. "Project the trigger syllables from the ritual scroll. Overlay them." The dark, jagged stains appeared, slotting into the eulogy like missing puzzle pieces. "It is not a eulogy," Oriel whispered. "It is an instruction set." "Read it backward," Aiden commanded. "Filter for a royal frequency voice. Sarafa's frequency." The archive was silent for a full 10 seconds. Then the speakers crackled. A new message played, pieced together from the holy text. It was not a prayer. It was a summons. A single, clear command, aimed not at the assembly, but at assets hidden within the spire's walls. 3 vectors, Rhea breathed, her hand on her weapon. "It's an assassin's call. It gives them coordinates. The high-gain acoustic truss, the central aroma vent, the primary resonance column." "He is not just planning to kill her," Aiden said, feeling sick. "He is forcing her to order her own execution." The next few days were a blur of strained, secret preparations. The enemy was defined. The weapon was found. Now, they had to build the shield. They met in Sarafa's most private chambers, a simple room high in the spire, with a single window overlooking the curve of Veretis. Here, the Empress practiced. She read the benediction, her voice perfect, resonant and lethal. "It is ingrained," she said, frustrated, after the 3rd attempt. "I have spoken these words, this way, since I was a child. Vale is counting on that, on my discipline." "So we break the discipline," Aiden said. He was sitting cross-legged on her floor, looking impossibly human and out of place. "Stop trying to speak it. You need to sing it, but in the wrong key." "I am an Empress, Mr. Hale. Not a lounge singer." "Good. Because this is a breathing technique." He demonstrated, inhaling sharply, then letting the air out in a controlled, subharmonic sigh. "It's called half-tone syncopation, a Terran vocal trick. You hit the shape of the note, but you shift the resonance. You speak around the sound. You starve the word of its mimetic power. You give them the performance, but you keep the meaning for yourself. She watched him. You sound like a dying Vitosh. He grinned. The first real grin he had shown her. I know. It's awful, but it's also silent. The trigger will not activate. Your turn. She tried. The sound she produced was awful. It was strained, unimperial, and utterly human. They both stared at each other for a second. And then, a sound that Aiden never thought he would hear escaped her, a short, suppressed laugh. That, she said, composing herself, was undignified. It was perfect, Aiden said, his voice soft. Try again. A new, fragile trust was being built, not of an Empress and her subject, but of two bomb defusal technicians, working in the dark. The first test of their new alliance came not from Vale, but from his attack dog. High Marshal Kaldor Wren was a mountain of Aurelian muscle and zealotry. He observed the Concordance's preliminary functions from a high balcony, his eyes missing nothing. He had seen the Empress's new human adjunct, and he did not like it. He staged his test in the public landing bay, a chaotic nexus of alien arrivals, a minor altercation, a Vitosh trader, a Centauri pilgrim, and a human engineer, arguing over a docking fee. Suddenly, an Aurelian in the robes of an oath priest stepped forward, pointing a shaking finger at the human. Pollution, the priest shrieked. He has defiled this sacred space with his off-world calculations. He brings his filth into our home. It was a setup, a pathetic, transparent setup. But the crowd, already on edge, turned. Aurelian guards, loyal to Wren, began to move in. Aiden, who had been observing the bay with Rhea, saw it unfold. He is testing the waters, Rhea murmured, seeing how far he can push the human as pollutant narrative. Let's show him, Aiden said. Before Rhea could stop him, he was moving, pushing through the crowd. Excuse me, pardon me, official linguistic business, he shouted, his voice cheerful and disarming. He arrived at the center of the confrontation. The human engineer looked terrified. The oath priest was foaming with righteous fury. High above, Aiden could feel Wren's gaze on him. Aiden looked at the priest. He defiled the space. You say with calculations dreadful. Simply dreadful. He turned to the crowd, which was now silent, watching. You know, Aiden said brightly, this reminds me of a very old, very sacred Terran parable, a deeply moral tale. He cleared his throat. He had the attention of the entire landing bay. Wren was leaning forward, and in a loud, clear, and slightly off-key voice, Aiden began to recite, a sailor went to sea, to see what he could see, but all that he could see, was the bottom of the deep blue sea, There was a profound, galaxy-spanning silence. The Aurelians were dumbstruck. The priest looked as if Aiden had just grown a second head. The human engineer looked even more terrified. Then, from the Cynthia delegation, a low, bubbling giggle started. A Vitosh let out a long, appreciative whistle. The tension did not just break. It shattered into a million pieces. The crowd dissolved, not in riot, but laughter. It was the most absurd, most idiotic, most human thing they had ever seen. Aiden beamed. He patted the stunned oath priest on the shoulder. See a sacred story. It heals all wounds. Have a lovely day. He walked away, not looking back at the balcony where he knew Kaldor Wren was watching him with a new, profound, and murderous hatred. The mask was off. The man was no bumbling academic. He was something else. The nursery rhyme gambit. Oriel's voice hummed later. Aiden had returned to the archive, exhilarated and shaking. An unconventional, but effective, dispersal of mimetic aggression. He knows I am not a fool, Aiden said. Now he'll be watching me, which is good. I want him watching me. His test confirms your nature, Lexomancer, Oriel said. And your recklessness has impressed me. It has unlocked a new data path for you. A new web of information appeared. A clue, buried in the Lapis Codex financial trail. A single, recurring, and massive energy expenditure, routed to a private sector of the spire. The Jade Echo Chamber, Oriel whispered. A private meditation room for the Regent, blessed by the Oath Priests. Aiden studied the specifications, his good mood evaporating. Oriel, look at the resonance patterns, the acoustic architecture. This is not a meditation room. It's an amplifier. Indeed, Oriel said. It is where High Regent Vale keeps his resonant blade, an ancient relic, a resonant blade capable of taking a single spoken command and multiplying it, embedding it into the very stone of the spire, to be broadcast on a frequency only the deep structure systems can hear. Aiden sat down, hard. He is not just forcing her to order her own death. He is planning to make the entire palace sing his justification for it. He is building a new, permanent benediction, one where he is the savior, and she is the sacrifice. Sci-Fi summoned him to the garden that night. The bioluminescent shards cast a cold, lonely light. She had seen footage of the landing bay. That was reckless, she said. It was not a question. It was effective, Aiden countered, too tired to be diplomatic. You have made High Marshal Wren aware of you. You have made yourself a target. It was time, Aiden said, turning to look at her. He needed to be looking at me, not at you. She studied him, her gaze analytical as always, but softer now. The risk you took, the way you used that absurdity, it was not in any glass choir training manual. No, he agreed. Why, Aiden, she asked, the imperial plural gone. Why you, the glass choir, must have other agents? Why volunteer for a mission with a 99% chance of failure and a 100% chance of being disavowed? Aiden looked away, out at the swirling clouds of Veredis far below. The silence in the garden stretched. He had not spoken of this in 10 years. Because it's them, he said, his voice flat. All the humor, all the life, drained from it. The Pale Crown. This is not my first encounter with their purification doctrine, he told her. He told her about Xylos 7, about the listening post, about his sister, Alara. He told her how Alara had been a true academic, a xenolinguist so brilliant she could find beauty in the grammar of a dying star's radiation, how she had been on her first off-world posting. The Pale Crown did not set the fires, he said, his voice a dead monotone. They just supplied the why. They provided the sacred text justifications. They convinced the local Xylosian sect that the Terran station was a pollutant, a stain on the soul of their world. The locals provided the fire. They burned the entire base, for purification. He turned back to Sci-Fi. His eyes were burning with a cold, white light she had never seen before. My sister was not a soldier. She was just curious and kind. They found her linguistic notes, and they declared them heretical codexes. So, yes, Your Majesty. When the glass choir said the Pale Crown was active here, attached to the highest levels of your government, I volunteered. I begged. I would have killed to be on this mission. Sci-Fi was silent for a long time. She processed his pain, his bottomless, icy rage. So this is revenge for you, she stated. It was not an accusation. He nodded. Once. It started that way. I wanted to burn them to the ground. I wanted to find Kaldor Wren and Arcturus Vale and do to them what they did to her. And now, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Aiden looked at the spire's light, reflecting in her unreadable eyes. Now I see that burning them down is not enough. That is their move. That is all they know how to do. If I do that, I am just like them. We have to be better. We have to build something in its place. He looked up at the lapis-inlaid dome, visible even from here, a beautiful, lying constellation. We have to turn their shadow into a mirror, so the whole galaxy can see exactly what they are. She stepped closer, the first voluntary breach of the distance between them. A mirror game, as you called it in this garden. You are certain it will work? It will work, Aiden said. The Lexomancer and the grieving brother finally, terribly, merging into one. They have given us the stage, the script, and the weapon. We will make this concordance a performance they will never forget. He met her gaze. No longer a spy. No longer a subject. When the curtain falls, they will all be caught in their own light. I will make sure of it. The Oriellum had become their war room. The vast, circular chamber was no longer just a repository of history. It was a living battlefield, and its data filaments were their weapons. Aiden stood at the center, projecting a three-dimensional map of the Grand Atrium. It was not a map of hallways and doors, but of sound and silence. He had overlaid it with what Oriel called an acoustic topography. They are not just using the Lapis codec as a summons, Aiden explained, his voice hushed but intense. He pointed to three pulsing, red-gold lines that converged on the central dais. They are using the entire room's architecture as a weapon. The trigger from Serapha's voice, amplified by the Lapis codec, will not just call the assassins, it will guide them. He tapped the first line. Vector 1, the high-gain acoustic truss. The sound will focus there, creating a harmonic key that will, I am betting, unlock a hidden rifle port. A perfect, long-range shot. He tapped the second line, which traced a path through the ventilation system. Vector 2, the central aroma vent. The command will trigger a release, not a gas, but a mimetic payload, a scent word. Anyone but a high-brain Aurelian would just smell incense. She would experience catastrophic system failure. Vile! Rhea's son hissed. She was standing with her arms crossed, her armor plates seeming to draw in the light. And the third, the worst, Aiden said. He indicated the massive, crystalline pillars that held up the dome. Vector 3, the primary resonance column. The trigger will hit this pillar and fracture. It will not be a bullet. It will be a word bomb. The sound itself, magnified to a lethal frequency, will shatter every neural pathway in her brain. Clean. Silent. No evidence but a dead Empress. 3 vectors, Rhea said, her voice like chilled iron. 3 teams. Which means we need 3 teams, Aiden said. Rhea shook her head. No. The Imperial Guard is compromised. Ren has seated his fanatics everywhere. I cannot trust a single unit. She looked at Oriel's light form. Oriel, give me the roster of the Ceremonial Honor Guard. The original roster, from before Marshal Ren's reassignments 3 months ago. The archive hummed. A list of names appeared. Rhea studied it, her eyes scanning, discarding. Him. Her. Not him. Him, she muttered. Finally, she pointed. These 4. I trained them myself. They are loyal to the Empress, not the office. They are true oath believers. I can bring them in. Good, Aiden said. But they cannot fight. Not directly. If a single shot is fired, we lose. The narrative is lost. This has to be a failure of their ceremony, not a military intervention. They will not be a strike team, Rhea said. They will be dressed as ceremonial attendants. They will be the trap. They will be at the vectors before the assassins can... While Rhea secures the physical space, Oriel's 1,000 voices whispered. I have been attending to the acoustic. A new projection appeared. It was the musical notation for the grand concordance chimes, an ancient, complex piece of music designed to attune the room's harmonics. "It is beautiful," Oriel said. "And it is, at present, a loaded gun." The chimes are set to resonate with the lapis codec, to clear the air for the trigger word. "So you can stop it?" Aiden asked. "Stop it, no, Lexomancer. That would be an error. And errors are noticed. I am editing it." A new line of code appeared, weaving itself through the original music. It was dissonant, strange, and barely perceptible. "I call it the syncopated refrain," Oriel hummed, with what Aiden was beginning to recognize as synthetic pride. "A failure chorus. When the chimes begin, they will sound perfect to the untrained ear, but they will be infinitesimally off. They will be singing in a key that is precisely 1/2 step flat. They will not clear the air for the trigger. They will fill it with acoustic chaff. They will disrupt the magic's rhythm. The word bomb will be a dud. The aroma vent will clog. The harmonic key will not turn." "A failure in the music," Aiden said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Oriel, you are a genius." "I am an archive," Oriel replied. "Genius is simply well-indexed data." While the Aurelians prepared their countertrap, Aiden had to manage his own side. He found Thomas Zhang in the delegation's common room, nervously shredding a napkin. "Aiden," Thomas said, his voice a low, panicked whisper. "The Centauri envoy. She wants a private meeting. She keeps asking obliquely if we know why the Regent is so interested in our cultural security protocols." "I think she suspects something. I think she is afraid of us." "Good," Aiden said, sitting down. "She should be. It means she is paying attention. Thomas, I need you to go to that meeting. And say what, excuse me, matriarch, but we are in the middle of a silent coup. Please ignore the bodies." "You say nothing," Aiden said. "You just listen. You let her talk. And then you mention, very casually, that your delegation is deeply concerned about security, that you have heard rumors of internal disagreements, that you are worried the concordance might be historically misunderstood." "That is inflammatory," Thomas hissed. "It is honest," Aiden said. "And then you ask her a favor, as one neutral party to another. You ask her to use the Centauri recording array. Tell her it is for the Terran archives, a cultural exchange. But ask her to keep the feed wide. For context, you will say, to capture the full majesty of the event." Tomas's eyes widened. "You want them to be witnesses. You want them to film the assassination." "I want them to film the failure of the assassination," Aiden corrected. "I want a multi-species, independent record. When this is over, Vale and Wren's first move will be to seize the official broadcast. We need a version of the truth they cannot touch. We need it by accident." Thomas swallowed, his hands shaking. "A multi-species witness. Plausible deniability. Aiden, this is actually good diplomacy. Horrifying, but good." "Go, Thomas," Aiden said gently. "Do what you do best. Be the reasonable, slightly worried diplomat." "I am not acting," Thomas muttered, standing up and straightening his tunic. "I am profoundly worried." The nights were the strangest. The Spire of Dawn was locked in artificial day, but Serapha kept her private chambers attuned to the rhythm of Veredus below. The lights would dim to a soft twilight, and the city-sized structure would grow quiet. It was in these quiet hours that they practiced. "This feels," Serapha said, her voice strained and deliberately, painfully flat, "like I am insulting my ancestors." She was attempting the half-tone syncopation. Aiden sat on the floor, a cup of his actual, hoarded Terran coffee in his hands. The aroma, he had joked, was his own aroma vent. "Your ancestors are not the ones with a word bomb aimed at their head," he replied. "Again, From the top of the benediction, and starve it. Do not give it any power. She took a breath. Her eyes closed. She began to recite. The words were golden, perfect Aurelian syntax. But the sound was empty. It was a perfect recording of a word, but with the soul surgically removed. It was flat, dead, and utterly powerless. There, he said, his voice soft. That is it. You are not praying. You are reading a legal disclaimer. She opened her eyes, the tension breaking. A small, tired smile touched her lips. If my oath priests heard me, they would have me scourged for blasphemy. Blasphemy is the point, he said, taking a sip of his coffee. He winced. It was his last bag, and it was getting stale. She watched him. That liquid, it smells like scorched earth. It is scorched earth, he said, swirling the cup. It is the lifeblood of my people. We drink it to remind ourselves that, even if the universe is bitter, we can be more bitter. She tilted her head. That is a very human sentiment. You find strength in negativity. We find strength in spite, Aiden corrected. The universe hits us. So we hit it back, mostly with caffeine and bad jokes. He sighed, looking into the black liquid. We are a species that weaponizes absurdity. It is all we have ever had. You have more than that, she said, her voice quiet. You have a disciplined imagination. A new silence settled between them. It was no longer the heavy, suspicious silence of their first meeting. It was a shared quiet, the kind two soldiers have before a battle. The royal rations are probably better, he said, gesturing with his cup. They are, she agreed. They are nutritionally perfect and taste of nothing. So, Aiden said, raising his cup. A toast to bad coffee, blasphemous rehearsals, and living in spite of it all. She did not have a cup, but she raised her hand, a small, elegant gesture of acknowledgement. To live, she agreed. The next day, Oriel guided Aiden's hands as he worked on a terminal linked to the Obel Gallery. The gallery was not just a vault. It was a conceptual space. Aurelians deposited obels, small, encrypted data coins to pay for ritual services, blessings, curses, memory purgings. It was the Pale Crown's black budget treasury. They are meticulous, Aiden murmured, scrolling through ledgers that were themselves written in code. Every bribe, every payment to Ren's fanatics, every tithe to the oath priests, it is all here, disguised as ritual cleansing. They believe their own doctrine, Oriel's voice hummed. They are not stealing. They are reallocating resources from the polluted state to the pure cause. Their arrogance is their weakness. Arrogance and syntax, Aiden agreed. He isolated the master ledger's authentication glyph. I cannot break this encryption, but I do not need to. What are you doing, Lexomancer? I am not a hacker, Oriel. I am a semiotician, Aiden said. He was not trying to break the lock. He was rewriting the keyhole. I am planting a sigil trap, a small, self-referential loop, a word virus. He coded a tiny, elegant string of mimetic logic. It was harmless, invisible until the ledger was opened with a specific, high-authority key, Vale's key, or Ren's. When they open this ledger, Aiden explained, to move their funds after the coup, the ledger itself will read the key's authority, and my trap will activate. Activate how? It will obey, Aiden said, a cold smile touching his lips. It will obey the key's most deeply coded imperative, purify. My virus will define the ledger's own transactions as polluting. The ledger will, in an act of ultimate purity, declare itself guilty. I will confess. And it will project that confession, using their own handwriting, their own sigils, to the one place in the spire they cannot control. The Oriellum, Oriel whispered. The Oriellum, Aiden confirmed. It will tell you everything. He sat back, rubbing his temples. The trap was set. 2 days before the concordance, the enemy moved. High Regent Arcturus Vale, in a public address, announced a glorious and necessary addition to the Grand Atrium. To show the proper dignity and respect to our new allies, he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. I have commissioned a new dais, the Lunar Crest Dais, a platform from which our Empress will deliver her words of harmony. Aiden watched the broadcast from Rhea's security office. He is not even being subtle, Rhea growled. He does not need to be, Aiden said. He is being pious. Look at the design. The dais was a sharp, crescent-shaped platform of black obsidian, angled perfectly at the lapis codec in the dome. It is not a platform. It is a focusing horn. It is designed to take Serafa's voice and aim it directly at the lapis. He is boosting the signal. He is making sure the trigger hits hard. Aiden leaned back, a cold knot in his stomach. Vale was arrogant. He was so confident that his human patsy was just a bumbling academic that he was openly sharpening the knife. Let him, Aiden said, mostly to himself. Let him be confident. Marshal Wren's move came 12 hours later. A new directive, issued to the Imperial Guard. Due to heightened security concerns, the directive read, the traditional ceremonial honor guard will be replaced by a contingent from the Marshal's own stalwart division. Their ceremonial helmets have been upgraded for enhanced security. Rhea slammed her fist on the table. He has done it. He has locked me out. My 4 agents are off the roster. His stalwarts are fanatics. They will be the assassins, hidden in plain sight. No, Aiden said, his mind racing. No. This is good. This is better. Better, Rhea looked at him as if he were insane. He is not locking you out. He is inviting you. He is arrogant. He thinks he controls the board. So, we use his arrogance. How he controls the guard. He controls their equipment. He controls the men. But who controls the inventory? Aiden asked. Rhea's eyes lit with a sudden, dangerous understanding. The quartermaster. He is old school. He hates Wren's new money zealotry. Exactly. So, we do not countermand Wren's order. We fulfill it. Aiden stood up, pacing. Serafa signs a new edict. A mask order, citing an ancient, obscure protocol. In times of great ritual, she will declare, the Empress's honor guard must be shielded from the burden of sight, lest they be overwhelmed by her divine presence. Something pompous and vaguely threatening. It is a perfect Vale-style move. A mask order, Rhea repeated, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. She will order them to wear different helmets. Precisely. The ones you provide? The upgraded security helmets, which you, as head of her personal security, have so thoughtfully pre-prepared. Helmets, Rhea said, her smile widening. That I have just had Oriole line with phase-shifting receivers, designed to catch and invert the exact frequency of the word bomb. So when Wren's men take their posts, Aiden finished, they will be wearing our shield. When the trigger is pulled, the only people who will be overwhelmed by the Empress's presence will be her own loyal guards. The traps were set. The pieces were in motion. There was nothing left to do but wait for the curtain to rise. That night, Aiden could not sleep. He stood in his small, functional quarters, the silence of the spire pressing in on him. He thought of Alara. He thought of the fire, the purification. His hands clenched. If the plan failed, if Vale had another trick, if Serafa's voice faltered, if Oriole's math was wrong, they would all be dead, and the pale crown would win. And a dark, cold part of his soul, the part that still lived on Xylo 7, whispered to him, if it fails, burn it all down. You know where Vale's quarters are. You know Ren's schedule. You are a Lexomancer. You do not need a bomb. A single, well-placed word would be enough. An aneurysm. A heart-stopping terror. You could end them. For Alara. The urge was so strong it made him sick. To choose that path was to become what he was fighting. To become just another fanatic who used ideas as weapons. Who purified the world with fire. He was caught between his past and his future. Between the hot, bloody pull of revenge and the cold, complex demands of justice. He was standing on the precise edge of the HFY principle. He had boasted about the strength of humanity. Was it the strength to destroy, or the strength to build? He did not know the answer. He just knew that, for Sarafa's sake, he had to pretend to be the man who built. He must have drifted, because the chime on his door startled him. It was the Empress's private signal. He found her in the bioluminescent garden, the same place it had all begun. She was not in her robes, but in a simple, unadorned white tunic. She looked almost human. "You are troubled," she said. It was not a question. "The coffee is running out," he said, falling back on their shared joke. "Do not," she said softly, turning to face him. "Do not lie, not tonight, not to me." She looked at him, her blue flame eyes searching for him. "That first day, here, in this garden, I asked you why you kept your distance. And I gave you a very bad answer about chandeliers," he recalled. "You did. And later, you gave me a tactical answer, about being a lure, about surveillance nets." She stepped closer. "Tonight, Aiden, I want the true answer." She was an empress. She was a target. She was a woman who had, for the last week, placed her life entirely in his hands. And she was, he realized, just as terrified as he was. "You avoided me," she pressed, her voice quiet but insistent. "Did you avoid me out of contempt for what I represent, or did you avoid me out of fear?" Aiden looked at her, and the walls he had built around himself, the Lexomancer, the spy, the grieving brother, all of it felt thin as paper. The truth was simple, and it was the most complicated thing in his life. "I was afraid," he admitted, his voice raw, "but not of you, or your guards, or your power." He met her gaze, and for the first time, he was not a Lexomancer or a soldier. He was just a man. "I was afraid," he said, "that being near you would make the trap obvious, that I would compromise the mission." "Compromise it how?" she asked, not understanding. He took a breath. "I was afraid, Serapha, that my hands would shake. I was afraid that if I got too close, I would not be able to do my job, because I would stop seeing the target, and I would just see you. I was afraid of my own feelings." He let out a shaky laugh. "And, on top of all that, I was terrified that if I spent more than 5 minutes in a room with you, you would see right through me, and you would just know that I have absolutely no idea what I am doing." She stared at him, and the last, unbreachable wall of imperial distance vanished. He saw not an empress, but Serapha. "Then you and I," she said, her voice impossibly soft, "are equally terrified, and equally without a plan. It is a good thing, then, that we have our disciplines." "And bad coffee," he added, trying to find his balance. "And bad coffee," she agreed. She did not smile, but the light in her eyes was all the warmth he needed. The trap was set. They would face it together. The grand atrium of the Spire of Dawn was a cathedral of silence. 36 delegations, representing 1,000 worlds, held a collective breath. The air, scrubbed and scented with ceremonial ozone, felt thick, heavy, and brittle. Aiden Hale stood with the Terran delegation, his face a mask of polite, academic interest. He was one among hundreds, a speck of human color in a vast alien tapestry. His cheap but expensive suit itched. His heart hammered against his ribs with a rhythm that felt loud enough to disrupt the very ceremony he was here to save. High above them all, on the newly constructed lunar crest dais, Empress Sci-Fi Nix was a column of white and obsidian. She was, at this moment, the single most isolated person in the galaxy. Beside the dais, in the seats of highest honor, sat her executioners. Regent Arcturus Vale, his face a picture of pious serenity. High Marshal Kaldor Ren, a solid, unmoving mountain of iron-gray armor and religious zeal. Aiden's gaze flicked to the three vectors. He could not see Ria's four agents. Which was the point? They were invisible, folded into the ceremony, dressed as attendants, their true purpose hidden beneath layers of protocol. He saw the high-gain acoustic truss, a web of metal far above. He saw the gleaming, crystalline resonance column near the dais. He could smell the faint, precursor scent of incense from the central aroma vent. Everything was in place. The snare was set. The bait was on the stage. He felt Thomas Jung shiver beside him. God, Thomas breathed. So low it was just a vibration. It is so quiet. Showtime, Aiden whispered. Serapha raised her hands. The grand, ancient concordance chimes began to sound, a cascade of notes, pure, perfect, and designed to attune the soul. But Aiden, listening with every fiber of his being, heard it. A single, discordant thread, a half-step dissonance, so subtle it was almost beautiful. Oriel's failure chorus. The acoustic chaff was now filling the room, invisible and perfect. Serapha began to speak. Her voice, amplified by the spire's acoustics, was a river of gold. The words of the opening benediction, ancient and powerful, flowed over the assembly. Regent Vale smiled. This was the moment. He watched her, his eyes full of adoration, waiting for the trigger. Aiden watched. His hands clenched so tightly, his nails were biting into his palms. He was not listening to the words. He was listening to the way she spoke to them. She was flawless. She hit every syllable, every cadence, every respectful pause. But the power was gone. She was performing the half-tone syncopation. She was reciting the holiest text in the Empire, with the flat, dead precision of a legal disclaimer. She was starving the trigger words of their magic. It was the most courageous, blasphemous, and brilliant performance Aiden had ever witnessed. Vale's smile faltered. He tilted his head, confused. The words were correct, but the resonance was wrong. He could feel it. The lapis codec, the beautiful, deadly script in the dome above them, was supposed to be singing by now, activated by the power in her voice. But it was silent. High Marshal Ren, less subtle, leaned forward, a frown creasing his brow. Serapha continued, her voice never wavering, a perfect, hollow shell. She was approaching the final stanza, the one that held the key. Vale's eyes narrowed. He would not be denied. He made a small, almost invisible gesture with his hand, a signal. Force it. He must have had a backup. A technician, somewhere deep in the spire, must have received the order. Bypass the voice. Activate the lapis codec. Manually. Aiden saw it before he heard it. The lapis lazuli script in the dome, the gift from Vale, suddenly pulsed. It flared with a dark, ugly, purple-black light. The manual override. The trigger was pulled. But the moment the code flared, Oriel's counter-move slammed into place. The failure chorus from the chimes shattered. The sound changed from a subtle dissonance to a screeching, harmonic counter-frequency. And in the air, directly below the lapis codec, a new projection appeared. Oriel's symmetrical matrix. It was a perfect mirror. The archive was taking the dark, purest code from the dome and reflecting it, making the invisible visible. The assembly gasped. Floating in the air, for all to see, was the weapon, the jagged, black, and undeniably evil lines of the assassination script, the subharmonic triggers, the kill commands. It was not a benediction. It was a curse. High Marshal Wren shot to his feet. He knew what he was seeing. His plan was exposed. The assassins, seeing the black code, their final go signal, began to move. Cut. High in the rafters, by the acoustic truss, a hidden panel slid open. The long-range rifle, a needle of dark metal, slid into view. The sniper, robed as a technician, put his eye to the scope. He saw only blackness. A hand, clad in the white glove of a ceremonial attendant, was covering his lens. Before he could react, Ria's first agent jammed a high-voltage stun prod into his neck. A silent spasm, a quiet slump. Vector 1, closed, cut. Near the central aroma vent, a robed oath priest, his face contorted in a mask of religious fury, produced a vial. He moved to jam it into the vent's intake, to release the scent-word plague. A second attendant, Ria's agent, stepped from the shadows of a pillar. The priest had no time to scream. A single, brutal, and silent chop to his throat. A second to his stomach. He was caught before he fell, dragged back into the alcove. Vector 2, closed, cut. At the base of the primary resonance column, the third assassin, one of Wren's own stalwart guards, his face hidden by the phase-shifting helmet Ria had provided, moved toward the crystal. He carried a ceremonial hammer, which he now raised, striking the crystal at this precise moment, with the black code active, would shatter it into the word bomb. Ria's third and fourth agents, also masked, simply stepped in front of him. Two of them. The stalwart stopped, confused. "Move," he hissed. "For the Regent." One of the agents, a tall woman, just shook her head. She pointed up, at the floating black glyphs. Then she pointed at Empress Sarafa. Then she pointed at him. She made no move to attack. She just stood. She was a wall of judgment. The stalwart hesitated, his arm shaking. The black code was visible. This was not a holy purification. This was something dark, something he had not been told. His moment of hesitation was all they needed. The black glyphs in the air began to flicker. The grand atrium was on the brink of a stampede. Delegates were shouting. Guards were drawing weapons. The Synthari matriarch, bless her, had her recording array aimed squarely at the chaos. This was Aiden's cue. He broke from the human delegation. He walked, deliberately, not running, into the open space between the delegates and the dais. He was just one man, in a badly fitting suit. He looked small and terrified, and completely out of his depth. High Marshal Wren saw him. "That human," he roared. "Seize him. He has poisoned the ritual." Aiden ignored him. He ignored the guards who were now running toward him. He looked up at the flickering, dying, but still toxic black glyphs. He had no artifact. He had no weapon. He had only his voice, and a memory. He took a deep breath. He did not shout. He spoke, pitching his voice to ride the room's chaotic acoustics, a perfect lexomancer's throw. He spoke a D oath, a Terran sacred text. "A sailor went to sea. Sea, sea," he recited, his voice clear and absurd. The guards stopped. They lowered their weapons, utterly baffled. "To see what he could see. See, see," he continued, a small, insane smile on his face. The black glyphs trembled. The simple, human, nonsensical syntax was acting as a virus, a disassembler. It was too simple. The Aurelian code could not find purchase. "But all that he could see. See, see." The room was dead silent, save for his voice. Even Wren was stunned into inaction. Aiden finished, his voice ringing with the full, ridiculous, and absolute power of disciplined imagination. Was the bottom of the deep blue sea, sea. The black glyphs shattered. They did not fade. They broke apart, like black glass, and evaporated. The toxic resonance was gone. The air felt clean. For a full second, there was silence. Then, chaos. Shouts. Screams. A stampede was imminent. "Be still!" Seraph's voice. No amplifier. No technology. Just the pure, unadulterated power of an Empress. A command that rattled bone and vibrated the soul. The entire atrium froze. Every eye snapped to her. She was standing on the lunar crest dais. Her face not one of fear, but of cold, incandescent fury. She had saved the room, but she was still trapped, surrounded by enemies, the proof of their intentions now gone. Her eyes found Aiden's. They were a universe away from each other. He saw the question in her gaze. The trap is sprung. The weapon is broken. But they are still here. What is next? He gave the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. Pull the second curtain. Aiden touched his wristcom, a simple, human device. "Oriel," he whispered, so low no one could hear. Now, in the Obel Gallery's data vault, miles away, a single, dormant sigil trap flared to life. Regent Vale's authority key had just been used a contingency to move his funds. The trap activated. It read its instructions. Purify. The ledger defined itself as polluted. In the Grand Atrium, the chaos was reforming. Regent Arcturus Vale was striding onto the dais, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. "Sacrilege," he bellowed, his voice pure, trembling rage. "Treason. The ritual has been defiled. The Empress, our sacred concordance, attacked." He was good. He was brilliant. He was seizing the narrative. He was pointing a shaking, accusatory finger. Not at Aiden. Not yet. "High Marshal," he roared at Caldor Wren. "What is the meaning of this, your men, the Black Code, what have you done?" He was throwing Wren to the wolves. A perfect betrayal. Wren, the blunt instrument, would take the fall. Vale, the loyal regent, would be left to cleanse the empire. High Marshal Wren stared at him, his face a mask of confusion. "My Lord Regent, I do not." "Do not speak," Vale shouted. "Guards, seize the High Marshal. He has brought the pale crown into our most sacred place." And then the thunderbolt hit. A new projection slammed onto the dome. It was not glyphs. It was text. Hard, clear. Aurelian script, projected from the Oriellum. It was a confession. The Obel Gallery's entire unencrypted, self-declared ledger. It was a cascade of names, dates, and transactions. Reallocation of tithe purification right. K. Wren. Payment stalwart division. A. Vale. Acquisition aroma plague. A. V. Approved. Sanction linguistic sacrifice. A. Vale. It was all there. Every bribe, every payment, every order. In their own digital handwriting, their own sigils. The names Vale and Wren burned in the air. 12, 100, 1,000 times. The atrium was so quiet, Aiden could hear Thomas Zhang's heart stop. Regent Vale froze. His mouth was open. His finger was still pointing at Wren. He looked up at the dome, at the undeniable, self-incriminating proof. Caldor Wren, the zealot, the fanatic, finally understood. He was not just being accused. He was being betrayed. By his regent, by his partner in faith. His rage, a cold, focused thing, snapped. "You," he roared, but not at the dome. At Vale. "You would name me heretic, you, who taught me the words you, who held the blade while I steady the arm." "Marshal, you are speaking treason," Vale hissed, his composure finally cracking, his eyes wild. "You are mad." "I am pure," Wren bellowed, striking his own armored chest. And in his rage, he made the final, fatal error. He did not speak of a legal defense. He spoke an oath. He swore by the faith that Vale had given him. By the unwritten word, he screamed, his voice raw. By the cleansing fire, I have done only what the true faith demanded. A new silence fell, a heavier, colder, and more final silence. Every Aurelian in the room, from the lowest attendant to Serapha herself, went rigid. Even the Syntheri and the Vitosh, who did not know the words, knew by the reaction that something unforgivable had just been said. By the unwritten word, it was the opening vow of the Pale Crown, an oath that had been banned for 1,000 years. It was an open, public, and irrevocable confession of heresy. Kaldor Ren had not only confessed to treason, he had confessed to blasphemy. Aidan let out a breath he had been holding for 6 months. It was done. The first spring was sprung. He had played every card, the nursery rhyme, the sigil trap. He had used their own arrogance, their own faith, their own system, to bring them down. He looked at Serapha. She was standing tall, her face unreadable. She saw it all. The confession on the dome. The heretical oath is still hanging in the air. The stunned, terrified assembly. She saw Vale, trapped, surrounded by law, by faith, by his own words. He was caught. It was over. But as she looked at her regent, Serapha's expression did not relax. It was tense, because she saw what Aidan saw. Regent Arcturus Vale was not panicking. He was not begging. He was not defeated. He was smiling. It was a small, thin, cold smile, a smile of profound, chilling amusement. He looked up at the damning evidence on the dome. He looked at his fellow heretic, Kaldor Ren. He looked at the Empress he had tried to murder, and then, his eyes locked with Aidan Hale's. The smile widened. He knew something. He had another layer. This was not the end. The linguistic sacrifice had failed. The political coup was in tatters. But the true ritual had not even begun. Regent Arcturus Vale's cold, thin smile was the most terrifying thing Aidan Hale had ever seen. It was the smile of a man who had not just lost, but who had been waiting to lose. This was not a defeat. It was a shedding. A smaller, crude political plan had just been sloughed off, revealing the true, horrific ritual beneath. "You have all," Vale said, his voice no longer roaring, but calm, almost conversational. "Played your parts beautifully." He did not look at the damning evidence on the dome. He did not look at the furious, betrayed High Marshal. He looked past Serapha, past the stunned delegates, his gaze fixed on the very bones of the Spire of Dawn. And he activated the blade. It was not a sound. It was a feeling. A single, deep, foundational note that seemed to come from the floor, the walls, and the obsidian ceiling. The entire grand atrium, the monument to interspecies harmony, shuddered. The golden, benevolent light of the hall flickered and died, replaced by a sick, pulsing, jade-green luminescence. It was the light of the jade echo chamber, miles away, and its resonance was now everywhere. Serapha gasped, her hand flying to her throat. The air had changed. It was thick, vibrating, and carried a command. A new set of words, ancient, dark, and powerful, were being forced into the room. A mimetic pressure designed to overwhelm. "No," Aidan whispered, recognizing the syntax. It was a reverse benediction, a deconsecration. It was an oathbreaker's text, designed to be spoken by an empress, that would invalidate her own divinity, her own right to rule. It was the linguistic sacrifice, not of her body, but of her very soul. "He is not trying to kill her anymore," Aidan said, his blood running cold. "He is trying to make her unwrite herself. He is forcing her to speak the counter-oath." The pressure was building. The green light intensified. The very architecture was now a weapon, a speaker broadcasting a single, overwhelming command: speak, renounce, abdicate, purify. Sarafa gritted her teeth, her body trembling under the acoustic assault. She was fighting it, but it was like fighting the gravity of a planet. Guards, Vale's voice was now calm, full of false sorrow. The Empress is unwell. The alien pollution has broken her mind. She is speaking heresy. Detain her for her own good. But the guards were in chaos, because Kaldor Ren had finally, truly, snapped. Heresy! Ren roared, his voice breaking with the fury of a billion betrayed stars. He was not going to be Vale's scapegoat. If this was the end, it would be the end he chose. I will show you heresy. He grabbed a stalwart guard, one of his own fanatics, and tore the helmet from his head. He was not trying to escape. He was trying to purge. To me, Ren bellowed, a signal to a dozen other stalwarts hidden in the crowd. The true faith calls cleanse the unbeliever. Cleanse the regent, cleanse them all. A strike team, his final contingency. The fanatics drew their own sidearms, not stunners, but blades and blasters. A bloodbath was about to begin. Rhea, Aiden shouted, his eyes on the strike team. Captain Rhea's son was already moving. She was not a politician. She was a soldier, and this, she understood. She and her 4 ceremonial agents were a wall of gray, functional iron. They met Ren's charge head-on. It was not a battle. It was a brutalist, silent equation. Rhea moved like a storm, her stun prod striking nerves and joints with a precision that was almost beautiful. The atrium was now split in 3. The delegates, screaming, pushed for the exits. Ren's fanatics, fighting Rhea's team. And at the center, Sarafa, locked in a psychic war with the building itself. And Vale, watching it all unfold with that terrible, patient smile. Tomas, Aiden yelled, finding his friend in the crowd. Tomas Zhang, for the first time in his life, was not a diplomat. He was a Terran. He saw the doors. He saw the other delegates. Synthari, he bellowed, grabbing the matriarch's arm. Keep that feed live. Do not let them shut the doors. We are witnesses. Damn it, we are all witnesses. He and the Synthari delegation did not run from the fight. They ran to the exits, forming a human and alien chain, holding the doors open, ensuring the Synthari recording array, broadcasting live to 36 worlds, could not be shut down. They were locking the no-spin zone in place. That left Aiden. He looked at Sarafa, her face pale, sweat beading on her forehead, fighting the invisible, crushing weight of the blade's song. He looked at Vale, the puppet master, untouchable on his dais. He could not fight Ren's men. He could not hold the doors. He had one, single, insane move. He had to go to the source. He ran. He did not run for the exit. He ran into the spire. He sprinted down a service corridor he had memorized from Oriel's maps, his comm pressed to his ear. Oriel, talk to me. The Jade Echo Chamber. He is broadcasting. I need to stop him. He is not just broadcasting, Lexomancer. Oriel's 1,000 voices whispered, laced with static and the jade-green resonance that was now corrupting the spire's systems. He has rooted himself. He has taken the resonant blade and become the spire's operating system. I am locked out. Then unlock me, Aiden yelled, skidding around a corner, his cheap shoes smoking on the polished floor. I am 2 minutes away. The chamber is sealed. It is a holy site. It will not open for you. Then find me a way in. Aiden slammed his hand on the panel for the high-speed lift. I am not asking. He reached the chamber. It was beautiful. A circular room of pure, pulsing jade. And in the center, on a black altar, was the resonant blade. It was a blade of resonance. A sword that looked like it was carved from solidified music, vibrating so hard it was a blur. It was singing its song of abdication, and the entire room was its amplifier. Aiden looked at the seamless, sealed door. Oriel. There is a vulnerability. Oriel's voice crackled. The acoustic tuning vent, sub-level 4. It is small, but it leads to the chamber's core. Aiden found it. A maintenance grate, barely wide enough for his shoulders. He tore it from the wall and threw himself in, crawling into the darkness. The jade green song now so loud, it felt like it was tearing his atoms apart. He fell into the jade echo chamber. He landed on the floor, his ears bleeding from the pressure. The blade pulsed. The song intensified. And in the very center of the sound, Aiden heard a new voice. Veils. You are just a mortal. The voice sneered. It was not coming from a speaker. It was coming from the air. Veil, from his dais in the atrium, was patched in. He could see this. He was watching. You are just a dirty little human, a piece of pollution. You cannot stop this. This is the word of God's. Aiden got to his feet, his body shaking. The sound was trying to get inside his head, to make him obey. It was trying to make him renounce. You are right, Aiden spat, his voice sounding small and weak in the hurricane of sound. I am just a mortal, and I have no gods. He looked at the blade. It was not a weapon. It was a broadcast, an instrument, and he was a lexomancer. He was a musician of the mind. And you know what we humans do when we are lacking, he yelled at the blade. When we are small and scared, and we have no magic, we improvise. Oriel, he shouted, tapping his comm. Are you with me? I am here, Lexomancer. Oriel's voice whispered, faint. Patch me into that blade's audio stream. I do not mean listen. I mean write. I need a channel. It will shred your cognitive matrix, Oriel warned. Just do it. Aiden felt a sudden, agonizing jolt as Oriel's data stream linked with his mind. And then, with the blade. He was inside the song. He could feel Veil's intent. The cold, precise, perfect, purest logic. It was a killing machine of pure syntax. He could not fight it. It was too old, too powerful. So he did not fight it. He corrupted it. He reached into his own mind, into the deepest, most human part of his memory. He found the first song he had ever learned. The one his sister, Alara, used to sing to him when the lights were out. A Terran lullaby, simple, illogical, full of nonsense words and gentle, syncopated rhythms. He pushed that rhythm into the blade's song. He did not try to stop the jade green broadcast. He cut and pasted his lullaby right into the middle of it. He took Veil's perfect, cold, mathematical command, and he gave it a blues riff. He broke its rhythm. He made it swing. In the grand atrium, the sound changed. The crushing, oppressive, jade green note suddenly stumbled. It stuttered. The perfect, divine command was suddenly, inexplicably, funky. Veil's smile vanished. He stared at the atrium, his face a mask of confusion. What is this? He hissed. Serapha, the pressure gone, gasped. She looked up. The sound was still there, but it was no longer a command. It was just noise. Back in the chamber, Aiden was laughing, blood on his lips. You cannot hold a beat, can you, Veil? He yelled. Your magic has no soul. Heretic, Veil's voice shrieked. Now just a voice, not a god's. No, Aiden said, his mind now fully linked, his own human imagination now the dominant signal. I am just a better artist. He had the blade's full attention. And now, Oriel, let's change the playlist. Force it to read its own history, not the holy texts, the transaction logs. Read the real history. The blade's song stopped. The lullaby faded. A new sound emerged. A cold, flat, synthesized voice. Oriel, using the blade. And in the grand atrium, the blade's voice, the word of God's, began to speak. Payment, Xylos 7. Purification, approved. Veil. Subject, Alara Hale, acquired. Veil. Project Linguistic Resistance, approved. Veil. Aiden's blood went from hot to absolute zero. Subject, Alara Hale. Acquired. He stumbled forward. He put his hand on the blade, and he saw. It was not a fire, not just a riot. It was a harvest. Vale had funded the riot to acquire his sister. He saw her, not burned, but in a lab, surrounded by pale crown oath priests. He saw them studying her, experimenting on her, trying to understand her gift, the one he had inherited, trying to weaponize her mind. The images flashed, one after another. A decade of pain, of experiments, of his sister's mind being taken apart, piece by piece, all to build this weapon. He saw her last, terrified, defiant thought, he will come. My brother, he will. Aiden Hale roared. It was not a human sound. It was a sound of such profound, elemental grief and rage that the jade-green crystal of the chamber cracked. The old wound was not just reopened. It was revealed as a chasm. This was not about a riot. This was about a vivisection. He could end it. Right now. He was linked. He had the blade. He could send a single word back through the link. He could find Vale's mind, on that dais, and he could shatter it. He could do to Vale what Vale had done to Alara. Revenge. Pure, hot, and just. He raised his hand, his mind forming the kill word. And in the grand atrium, Serapha Nyx, free of the blade's song. Her eyes clear, her voice iron, finally spoke. Regent Arcturus Vale, she said, her voice cutting through the silence. For the crime of high treason, for the crime of heresy, for the attempted deicide of a sitting empress, and for the murder of my people, I find you guilty. Captain Rhea's son, arrest him. Rhea, her battle finished. Ren's fanatics all stunned or dead, turned. Kaldor Ren, his armor dented, his faith in ruins, saw her coming. He saw his world end. No, he growled. He tore the High Marshal's sigil from his chest and threw it to the ground. I will not be caged. He chose a warrior's death. He raised his hand, not with a weapon, but with a word. He was an oath priest, a fanatic. He was channeling his own rage, his own word, at Rhea. A death touch, a psychic blow. Rhea's son, daughter of a line of soldiers, did not even flinch. She simply raised her arm. And the stalwart helmet she held in her hand, the one she had confiscated, with its phase-shifting receiver, caught his psychic attack. It inverted it, and it threw it right back. Kaldor Ren stumbled. He looked at his hand, confused. He looked at Rhea, and then he just collapsed. His own aftershock, his own hatred, had snuffed out his mind like a candle. He was a shell, gurgling on the floor. In the jade chamber, Aiden saw it. He saw justice, cold, public, lawful. He looked at his hand, the kill word trembling on his tongue. He saw Alara. He saw her, not in the lab, but as a child, singing their stupid song. We are better, she used to say. We do not hit back. We build. He chose. He let the kill word go. It dissolved. Harmless. His rage did not vanish, but it cooled. It went from fire to lens. He took his hand off the blade. He sealed it, not with a word of power, but with a word of law. This is now evidence, he said, his voice shaking, but his own. File mark Empress versus Vale. It is sealed. By order of the Terran delegation, under interspecies treaty law. He was, after all, a bureaucrat. A damn good one. He turned, found the real door, and hit the emergency release. The door hissed open. He walked out, leaving the blade silent, and his sister, finally, at peace. He walked back into the grand atrium. The air was clean. The delegates were silent. Rhea's team was securing Vale, who was, for the first time, not smiling. He was just a man, old, gray and beaten. The multi-species delegates, all of them, were cheering. They were cheering for the Synthari, who were still filming. They were cheering for Rhea. They were cheering for Sci-Fi. And as he emerged, bleeding, covered in dust, his cheap suit in ruins, they began to cheer him. It was a rain of sound, approval, justice, and it washed the last of the hot, black hatred from his heart. Vale saw him. His one last, desperate ploy. "You!" Vale screamed, his voice no longer a god's. "You cannot do this. I am the regent. I call upon him. I call upon the Star King, the true master of the Pale Crown. He will answer me." He gurgled, a high, thin wail. "My king, answer me." The atrium was silent. The delegates waited. The Star King did not, in fact, answer. Aiden walked over to the struggling, pathetic man. He leaned in, his voice a dry, exhausted whisper, for Vale's ears only. "He is not picking up," Aiden said. "Your support line appears to be busy." Vale's face crumpled. It was, finally, over. As the guards dragged the former regent away, Serapha Nix walked off the dais. She walked through the debris, past the bodies of Ren's fanatics, past the stunned delegates. She walked directly to Aiden Hale. She stood before him, her imperial mask gone, her face just a woman's face, tired, grateful, and curious. She looked at him, the human, the Lexomancer, the spy, the savior. "You," she said, her voice quiet in the vast, silent hall. "You kept your distance for so long, for all those months." For what Aiden looked at her, he saw Alara's face. He saw the truth, the whole truth. He saw the report from Oriel, the one that had just sealed Vale's fate. Subject Alara Hale, acquired. He opened his mouth. He was about to tell her, about his sister, about the real reason he was here, about the real connection. He stopped. He looked at her face, gratitude, dawn, fragile hope, and he realized this was not the time. Her victory was too new. The truth was too heavy. It was a burden, not a bond. Not yet. He held back that one. Final, agonizing peace. He gave her a tired smile. "Later," he said. "I will tell you later. Right now, I think I have earned that coffee." The aftermath was not a celebration. It was a purge. The victory in the grand atrium had not been an end, but a beginning. With the Resonant Blades logs, Oriel's complete data, and the Synthari's multi-spectrum footage, Serapha's counter-coup was not a war. It was a surgical procedure, and it was brutal in its efficiency. The Pale Crown, which had hidden for centuries in the shadows of ritual, was exposed in the light. Oriel, now unbound, was a relentless angel of truth. The archive's light filaments traced the vast, cancerous web Vale had built. Within 24 hours, 212 arrests were made. Generals, oath priests, financiers, and courtiers who had, a day before, been the pillars of the empire, were now just names on a list of traitors. Captain Rhea's son, her face a mask of cold, exhausted satisfaction, led the sweeps. She moved with a terrible, silent speed, her small, loyal team cutting through the compromised Imperial Guard like a scalpel through diseased flesh. She did not bother with warrants. She used Serapha's own, newly recorded, ironclad edict. She was not arresting heretics. She was cleansing a stain. The Obel Gallery was seized, its conceptual wealth, The billions of data coins paid for purification rights that were, in fact, bribes and assassination contracts, were frozen, audited, and poured back into the imperial treasury. The Oath Temples, once centers of power, were locked. Auriel began the long process of detoxifying the core texts, scanning millennia of doctrine for the linguistic viruses Vale and his predecessors had planted. While Rhea cleaned the wound, Thomas Zhang stitched it closed. He had become, overnight, the single most important diplomat on the Spire of Dawn. The panic was gone, replaced by a steely, focused competence. He was in his element, but the element had changed. He was no longer a man walking on eggshells. He was the man defining the new floor. "It was not," Thomas said, his voice smooth and clear, addressing the emergency assembly of the 36 delegations. "A human intervention. It was, as the Centauri's excellent, undoctored footage shows, a moment of profound interspecies cooperation." He stood on the atrium floor, not the dais, a gesture of humility that was, Aiden knew, a move of pure power. "The Terran delegation, like all of you, was a guest," Thomas continued. "But when the very foundation of this concordance was threatened by an internal, heretical force, we did not see a political issue. We saw a moral one. The Empress's courage, Captain Sun's valor, the Archivist's unblinking truth, and yes, the quick, unorthodox thinking of a single Terran semiotician. These were not separate actions. They were a single, unified response, a harmony." He was brilliant. He was not just spinning the narrative. He was weaving it into a tapestry of alliance. He was making Earth an indispensable partner, not an interfering interloper. He was ensuring that human was no longer synonymous with pollutant, but with catalyst. The true masterstroke, however, came from Sci-Fi. 3 days after the failed coup, she stood on the same lunar crest dais. The black obsidian had been cleansed, the jade-green resonance gone. The lapis codec above was dark, its power permanently severed. She wore no crown. She wore a simple white tunic, the same one Aiden had seen her in. She had called for a concordance of trust, and she began it with a confession. "For 1,000 years," she said, her voice amplified but unadorned. No divine resonance, just her own, clear voice. "My empire has hidden its power in its language. We believed our rituals made us strong. We believed they made us pure." She paused, and the atrium silence was absolute. "We were wrong," she said. "We were not strong. We were brittle. We were not pure. We were complex, and we were afraid to admit it. We built a system of faith so rigid that it could not bend, and so it was broken. It was broken by arrogant men who mistook complexity for corruption. They used our sacred words as weapons, and in doing so, they revealed the flaws in our most deeply held beliefs. It was a speech that would, Aiden knew, shatter the very bedrock of Aurelian society. It was the most dangerous, and the bravest, thing she had ever done. "Today, that ends," she said. "The age of hidden language is over. The age of weaponized ritual is over." She gestured, and Oriel's light form, the condensed fog and starlight, appeared beside her on the dais. It was a shocking, unprecedented image. The archive, the servant of the throne, now stood beside it. "This is the Oriellum," Sci-Fi announced. "Our archive, our history, our truth. As of today, it is not an Empress tool. It is a people's partner. All rituals, all laws, all edicts will be open source. They will be logged, analyzed, and made transparent by the archive, for all species to see. There will be no more shadows, no more subharmonics, no more linguistic sacrifices. Our words, from this day, will mean only what they say, and that will be our new strength." It was, Aiden thought, the most magnificent political maneuver he had ever seen. She had not just survived a coup. She had used it to launch a reformation. But Aiden was not in the crowd. He was not there to hear the thunderous, stunned applause of the 36 delegations. He was backstage, in a small, dark, empty prep room, staring at a blank wall. In his hand, he held a single, small data slate. On its screen was a single image, a frame grab Oriel had extracted from the Resonant Blade's memory core. It was Alara. It was his sister, not the laughing, vibrant woman from his memories. She was thin, pale, her head shaved, her bright, curious eyes wide with a mixture of terror and defiance. She was in a lab. She was Subject Alara Hale. And his hands, the hands that had rewritten a god's weapon, the hands that had faced down an Empress, were shaking so violently he could barely hold the slate. The rage was gone. The cold, righteous fury had been spent in the Jade Chamber. This was something else. This was a grief so profound it had no bottom. This was the realization that his entire quest for revenge had been a misunderstanding. He had not been hunting his sister's murderers. He had been, unknowingly, hunting her captors. And he had been, after all, 10 years too late. He had won. He had saved the Empress, stopped the coup, and become a hero. And he felt, in that moment, like a complete and utter failure. He heard the door hiss open. He did not need to turn. The air in the room changed, the faint, clean scent of Aurelian ozone. Serapha Nix stood in the doorway, the cheers from the atrium, a distant storm. She had left her own triumph to find him. She looked at him. She looked at the data slate in his trembling hands. She looked at his face, which he knew must be a wreck of unprocessed grief. She did not speak. She offered no words of comfort, no imperial condolences, no empty platitudes about his sister's sacrifice. She simply walked into the room, stood beside him, and looked at the blank wall. They stood in silence. 1 minute. 5. The silence was a shared thing. It was not empty. It was full. It was full of the things they could not say. The cost. The blood. The bodies of Ren's fanatics were quietly removed from the hall. The empty seat where Regent Vale had sat. Image of Alara in the lab. He finally, slowly, lowered the data slate, his fingers finding the strength to turn it off. His hands were still shaking. "So," he said, his voice a dry, raw croak. "That was a pretty good speech." She turned her head, just slightly. A hint of a smile touched her lips. "I thought it lacked chandeliers." He let out a short, sharp breath that was half a laugh, half a sob. "Yeah, well, the lighting was terrible, and you really need to work on your dramatic pauses." "I will take that under advisement, Mr. Hale," she said, her voice soft. The tension broke. The rigid, awful knot in his chest eased. Just a fraction. They had, without knowing it, just performed their own ritual. A ritual of shared, human, absurd humor, to hold back the screaming dark. "I think," he said, rubbing his face, "I am going to sleep for 3 days." "A reasonable plan," she agreed. "I have scheduled my own nervous breakdown for next Tuesday. I can pencil you in, if you like." He looked at her, and the gratitude he felt was as vast and as terrifying as his grief. "I think I will pass. But thank you." Their eyes met, and in that regard, the unspoken truth passed between them. They understood the price. They knew what this had cost, not just the Empire, but him and her. He had to get out. He had to be somewhere this was not. He found Thomas Zhang 2 days later, packing the delegation's belongings. They were heroes. Their stay had been extended, indefinitely, as honored guests of the new concordance. "Aiden," Thomas said, his face glowing. "I just got off the comm with Earth." You and they are naming a park after us, I believe, or at least a public works building. The Aurelian Compact. It is a new age. I am resigning, Thomas, Aiden said. The smile vanished from Thomas's face. What are you talking about? Resigning from what? From everything, Aiden said, holding out a data slate. It was his formal resignation from the glass choir. I am done. I am out. Out, Thomas sputtered. Aiden, you are the most valuable human in the galaxy right now. You are not an operative. You are a symbol. You are the Lexomancer who saved the Empress. The glass choir is not going to just let you go. They do not have a choice, Aiden said, his voice flat. I have been their lure. I have been their weapon. I did the job. I found out what I needed to find out. He thought of Alara. And now I am done. I'm no symbol, Thomas. I am just a man. And I want to go home. Home to what a desk job, analyzing ancient Terran poetry. It sounds, Aiden said, a small, tired smile on his face. Like heaven. I want to be a boring academic again. I want to be the guy who gets paid to argue about the semiotics of a comma. I want a normal life, Thomas. For the first time in 10 years, Thomas looked at him. He saw the exhaustion. He saw the steel beneath it. This was not a negotiation. It was a statement of fact. They will fight this, Thomas said, his voice soft. Let them, Aiden said. But I am done. He thought that was the end. He would pack his bag. He would take the long, slow transport back to Earth. He would find a quiet university and disappear. But there was one more meeting. Sarafa had summoned him. Not to the garden. Not to her chambers. But to a small, bright, sterile-looking room he had never seen before. It was an office. It had a desk and a window overlooking the Veredis curve. It is small, he said, standing in the doorway. It is. Serapha agreed. She was standing by the window, in a functional, gray tunic. It is also, at present, the most powerful room in the spire. How is that? Because it is the office of the independent lexico-political advisor to the Empress, she said. An office I created this morning. It has one primary function: to review all state-level rituals, all edicts, and all laws, and to veto any that are found to be linguistically insecure. She turned to face him. It is a position that requires a unique skill set, a deep knowledge of memetics, a proven track record of creative disobedience, and an allergy to royal chandeliers. Aiden stared at her. You are offering me a job. I am, she said. The Empire needs you. Aiden, I need you. I am reforming a millennium of tradition. I am doing it with Oriel's logic and Ria's steel. But I need the human element. I need a person who knows how to sing the wrong note on purpose. I need a man who knows how to build a mirror. He was stunned. Go home or stay here, at the epicenter of the new world he had helped create. To honor Alara's memory by building, not just running. He looked around the small, sterile room. It is a tempting offer, truly. But I have to be honest with you. Your Majesty. The benefits package seems a little sparse. He walked over to the wall. I mean, where are you? The essential equipment. She looked at him, confused. Equipment. The lifeblood, he said, tapping the wall. The scorched earth, the spite. Your Majesty, I am a simple man. I can accept this position of galaxy-altering power, on one and only one condition. She waited, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. Does it, he asked, have a human coffee machine? And I do not mean a replicator. I mean a real, hissing, steaming, bad decision-making machine. Serapha looked at him, and for the second time, she laughed. It was a real, unguarded sound. "I believe Oriel can be tasked with acquiring one." "Then I will consider it," he said. Oriel, in the days that followed, was busy. The archive, in its new, public-facing role, was compiling the definitive history of the failed coup. It had gathered all the data, the Centauri footage, the Abel ledgers, the Resonant Blades logs, and Aiden's own, newly declassified reports from the Glass Choir. The archive, being a being of infinite, poetic data, gave the event its final, official file name. It was not the Night of the Long Knives or Vale's Folly. It was, Oriel decided, the heroic epic of the well-timed syncopation. Aiden was still considering. He was standing on the high, open-air balcony of the Spire of Dawn, looking down at the turquoise clouds of Viridis. The air was thin, cold, and clean. He heard her approach. She stood beside him, not as an Empress, but as Serapha. They looked at the planet's curve for a long time. "So," he said, "your new transparent government. How is that going? Any unexpected consequences?" "The nobility is in a quiet state of terror," she said, her voice calm. "The priesthood is threatening to excommunicate me, and 36 alien species are, for the first time, actually trusting us. It is a mess, a glorious, beautiful mess." She turned to him. "I am glad you are here to see it, that you did not stay away." "Ah," he said, a shadow of their old joke passing between them. "Distance." "I no longer accept it, Aiden," she said, her voice quiet but firm, her blue flame eyes locked on his. "Between my government and my people, or between myself and my advisors, the old ways are gone." Aiden looked at her, at the woman who had faced down her own gods, who had wagered her empire on a blasphemous, off-key rehearsal. "I am not sure I agree, Your Majesty," he said softly. He turned to the wind, gazing at the horizon. "I've been thinking, and I have decided that distance is actually very useful." She looked at him, a flicker of surprise, of hurt. "It is," he continued, a small, true smile touching his lips. "Really only good for one thing." "And what is that baiting a trap?" he said. The Spire of Dawn was healing. The jade-green cracks in the jade echo chamber had been sealed, and the resonant blade was silent. Now, a piece of evidence in Oriel's deepest, most secure vault, the concordance of harmony, which had almost been a massacre, had concluded as the concordance of trust a flurry of new treaties, new alliances, and a universe of new, complex paperwork that made Thomas Zhang weep with joy. Earth was no longer a guest. The harmonic status that Serapha had granted was unprecedented. It was not just a trade agreement. It was a full partnership, a recognition that human instability was, in fact, just another name for creative problem-solving. Aiden Hale, the new, and first, independent lexico-political advisor, was standing in his new office. It was, as promised, small, and in the corner, gleaming with a kind of profound, mechanical beauty, was the hissing, steaming, bad decision-making machine. A real, Terran coffee machine, which Oriel had sourced from a freight hauler at a cost that Aiden politely requested to never know. He was pouring his first cup, the aroma of scorched earth filling the room. When Serapha walked in, she did not knock. He was learning, not a fan of unnecessary protocol. "It is," she said, sniffing the air. "Even worse than I remembered." "It is," Aiden agreed, taking a long, blissful sip. "Perfect. Welcome to the office, Your Majesty." "I am still working on the decor." "I am not here about the decor. Advisor," she said, though her eyes were fixed on the machine with a kind of scientific horror. She turned to him. The days of chaos and reformation had settled, leaving a quiet, focused energy in their wake. She was an empress, but she was also a woman who had, finally, had a full night's sleep. "I have a question," she said. "A final one. A piece of unsecured data." "My entire job description," he said, leaning against his new desk. "Ask." "The blade," she said, her voice low. "The resonant blade in the jade chamber. It was an ancient Aurelian artifact, key to the harmonic structure of our species. Its power was in its divine, unchangeable syntax. And you, a human, broke it." She stepped closer. Her blue flame eyes were not accusing. They were desperate. "You did not just block it, Aiden. You hacked it. You took it apart. You made it obey you. You, a man who, by all our laws, should not have even been able to perceive its frequency." She held his gaze. "You have told me the tactical reasons for your distance. You have told me some of the emotional ones. But you have not told me this. How did you know how to do that?" Aiden looked down into his coffee. The black, bitter liquid. The truth. He had held this one last piece back, not sure, as he had said, if it was a burden or a bond. He now realizes it was both, and that she had a right to it. "I did not," he said softly. "When I went into that room, I had no plan. I was just a nursery rhyme guy. I was out of tricks." He looked up at her. "When I touched the blade, I felt Vale's command. It was perfect. It was cold, logical, and unbreakable. It was a perfect piece of math. You cannot fight math." "Then what did you do?" she whispered. "I did not fight it," he said. "I did what humans always do. I cheated. I gave it a variable it could not solve. I introduced chaos. An element so illogical, so simple, and so stupid that its perfect, divine equation just fell apart. The lullaby," she said. "The song. The Terran parable." "A lullaby, yes," Aiden said, a sad smile touching his lips. "It was my sister's. Her name was Alara. She sang it to me when we were kids, when I was afraid of the dark." He took a deep breath. "The glass choir knew about Xylo 7, about the fire. They thought that was the end of her story. They thought Vale had just funded a riot. They did not know the truth." "The truth," Serapha said, her voice flat. "That Oriel found in the blade's log. Subject Alara Hale. Acquired." "Yes," Aiden said, his voice tight. "She was a linguist, a xenolinguist, a lexomancer, like me. Only she was better. She was brilliant. She was a visiting scholar, here on the Spire, years ago, in the Oriellum." "A scholar," Serapha repeated, her mind clearly working, fitting the pieces together. "She was studying the resonant blade," Aiden continued. The story Oriel had helped him piece together, now clear in his own mind. She was the one who found its flaws. She was the one who created its original failsafe. A disassembly code based on a non-mathematical, chaotic rhythm principle. "Based," he said, his voice thick, "on her lullaby." He ran a hand through his hair. "The pale crown. Vale. They did not just riot on Xylo 7. They harvested it. They took her. They took her. And her research. And then they spent 10 years in a lab, torturing her, forcing her to invert her own work. They turned her failsafe lullaby into the weapon I faced in that chamber. The weapon they used to try and kill you." He looked at her, his eyes burning with the memory. "So, when you ask me how I knew I did not, I was a scared little brother in the dark, and I used the only song I knew. I just got lucky. It was just her. Really. It was always her." He was finished. He had laid the truth bare. He expected he did not know what. Pity, sympathy, an awkward imperial pat on the head. He did not expect Oriel. Aiden Hale," a voice said. It was not Oriel's thousand-voice chorus. It was a single voice, faint, digitized, and hesitant. The light form of the archivist was shimmering, unformed, in the doorway of his office. "Oriel," Serapha said, turning, stunned. "Your voice is singular." "Apologies, Majesty," the single, feminine voice whispered. "It is an archaic protocol, a personal file access voice. I have a file, a protected journal, one I have not been able to index until this moment." "A file," Aiden said, his heart lurching. "The name," Oriel's voice trembled. "Alara Hale, the failsafe, the lullaby. This is a cross-corrupted index, a memory from a different vault." "Oriel," Serapha commanded, her voice sharp but gentle. "What is it?" "It is a log," Oriel whispered. "From before, years ago, a security protocol log, from Princess Serapha's medical wing." Aiden looked at Serapha. Her face, her perfect alabaster skin, had gone absolutely white. "Play it, Oriel," Serapha commanded, her voice a bare whisper. The air in the small office shimmered. A holographic projection appeared. It was not a grand, imperial file. It was a scrambled, chaotic piece of audio. A voice, frantic, Aurelian, a medical technician. Massive internal resonance. We cannot find the source. She is dying. The princess is dying. Get the regent." Another voice. A man's. "No, he is off-world. It is just us. Her heart rate is failing." And then a new voice. A woman's. Humans. Calm. "Shut it down. Shut all of it down. The resonance is not internal. It is external. The spire it is singing. A stray harmonic. From the echo chamber. It is killing her." "Who are you?" The technician's voice. "Get out of here. This is a restricted." "I am Scholar Alara Hale," the voice said. Aiden sobbed. He fell back against the desk. It was her. It was her. "And I know that song. I wrote the counter song. Give me access to her." A new sound. A low, hissing, chaotic rhythm. A lullaby. Not sung, but hummed. A vibration. "What are you doing?" the technician. "It is just a stupid song," Alara's voice whispered, her voice full of strain. "It is not magic. It is just a lullaby. For my brother. It is breaking the rhythm. See it is. It is working." The audio log ended. Silence. Aiden looked at Serapha. She was not looking at him. She was staring at the wall, her hand over her mouth, her blue flame eyes, wide with a memory so deep it was almost not a memory at all. "A fever," Serapha whispered, her voice shaking. "A riding accident. When I was a child. That is what they told me. That I had a fever." She turned to Aiden, and her eyes were not an empress's. They were the eyes of a child, remembering a dream. "I remember the song," she whispered. "The sound. It was dark, and I was dying. I was so cold, and I heard the lullaby." A woman's voice. A song, a stupid song, about a sailor who went to sea." She looked at Aiden, and the final, 1,000-year-old wall of ice that was the Aurelian Empire broke. "It was her," Serapha whispered. "You're your sister, Alara. She did not just build the failsafe. She used it. On me." Aiden stared at her. The pieces of his past, his sister's past, and Serapha's past slamming together into a new, terrible, beautiful, and agonizing shape. "Oh," he breathed. "Oh, God, Serapha." I have been," she stammered, backing away, her hand on the wall. "I have been afraid. All this time. I knew you. I felt it. Your presence. Your humanity. It was a debt." "A debt," Aiden repeated, his own mind reeling. The feeling of owing, she said, her voice cracking. I thought it was a political debt, a racial, a weakness, that I was tainted by this pull towards you, towards your people. She looked at him, and her eyes were just eyes. That is why I kept my distance. Aiden, I was afraid that this debt, this life debt to your anonymous human savior was clouding my judgment. I was afraid that it was not fair. They just stared at each other. Two people, from two different worlds, who had been hiding from each other, for all the wrong and all the right reasons. Aiden was the first to move. He did not touch her. He just took a step. So, he said, his voice raw and shaky and human. If it was not my distance, then it was yours. Yes, she whispered, and a single, crystalline tear, the first in 1,000 years of her bloodline, traced a path down her cheek. Well, he said, his voice thick, that is inefficient. She looked at him. A small, watery, broken sound escaped her. A laugh. We are, he said, his own tears coming, hot and fast. A mess. A glorious, beautiful mess, she corrected, her voice finding a tiny piece of iron. HFY, he whispered. HFD, she asked. Humanity. Fuck yeah, he said, wiping his face. It is a principle. It is what we do. We do not pay debts. Sarafa. We just remember. We fix things. We build. And we love without demanding a receipt. He took a breath. My sister. She did not save you to own you. She saved you because you were dying. Because she could. That is all. Sarafa looked at him, and her face changed. The debt was gone. The fear was gone. And all that was left was the woman. So, she said, her voice stronger, we have no distance, then, no debt. Just us. Just us, he agreed. And a lot of paperwork. You did just sign the Harmonic Status Act. You know. She laughed again. A real, genuine, warm laugh. I did, she said. And I believe my new advisor has had conditions. He does, Aiden said, his voice finally, steadying. The coffee machine is essential, but I am adding one more. Oh, she said, raising an eyebrow. The Empress returning, but changed. All new rituals, he said. From this day forward, must have a safety gap. A safety gap, a loophole, he clarified. A clause for human error. A safety gap for laughter. For laughter, she repeated, tasting the word. For laughter, he confirmed. It is non-negotiable. Then, she said, it is non-negotiable. Advisor. They were standing on the balcony, later. The real balcony. The one where it had all really begun. The sun was setting on Veredus, a swirl of turquoise and rust, and the lights of the spire of dawn were coming on, one by one. They were not alone. So, a dry iron voice said from the doorway, Captain Rhea's son. Her armor was clean. Her face was as it always was. This is the new foreign policy. Standing brooding on balconies. Aiden smiled. It is part of the cultural exchange, Captain. Rhea walked up, standing beside them. The three architects of the new world. So, Rhea said, her eyes on the horizon. How do I log this in my security report? Log, what Captain? Sarafa asked, her voice innocent. This, Rhea said, gesturing between the two. The relationship status. It is messy. Aiden looked at Sarafa. Sarafa looked at Aiden. It is in process, Aiden said, his voice dry. We are testing a new protocol. Sarafa smiled. A small, secret, real smile. And, she added, her eyes on the setting sun, we are learning how not to dodge. Rhea grunted. Messy, she confirmed. I will. I will file it under ongoing diplomatic hazard. She turned and left, her boots silent on the stone. They were alone. Then, truly, the bells of the spire, the old concordance chimes, began to ring. But they were different. Oriel had retuned them. The failure chorus was gone. They were just bells, ringing in the evening, a call to peace. So, Serapha said softly, her shoulder almost touching his. The real answer to my first question. In the garden. All those months ago. Aiden looked at her. He looked at the Empress. He looked at the woman. He looked at Serapha. And he knew the whole answer. Finally, he turned, his voice a whisper. Just for her. In the cold, clear, Veredis wind. I kept my distance, Your Majesty, he said. So I would not disappear in their trap. He paused. He looked into her blue flame eyes. And because I was afraid, he finished, that I would want to stay by your side for too long.